Good morning, good afternoon, friends. Again, in this is our third use case. That we'll talk about the social networking data analysis. This architecture uses pretty much entire spectrum of AWS services. You can see from the left-hand side, once a user logs in through the browser or through any iOS, Android devices, a user is going to get the cached content from the CloudFront, which is really AWS CDN network, so that to basically for the geographically distributed users. So if the users are coming from Europe or Ireland, then they'll get those cached content versus users in US, they'll have separate CloudFront, and similarly to from India or other places. Then you have this Route 53, which is really the main purpose of Route 53 is a domain name resolution. So it basically converts your whatever domain name that you type into an actual IP address. For example, opencoaching.com, the website that you are watching this video runs off of Route 53. Then there is a typically Cognito, which is used for authentication purposes. Many applications have their own authorization, custom authorization. Some applications use purely authentication purposes. Again, opencoaching.com uses purely for authentication purposes, because once you enroll it, you have access to the full course. And then Lemra basically decides who can access what. So what you see on the left-hand side is really a lot of web front-end activities that AWS services are used, and you can pretty much memorize this thing, that this architecture is most likely going to be used when you're interacting with the external users or users over internet. You'll most likely going to be using CloudFront and serve the content from S3 bucket. You never, in practical applications, you never create an S3 as a web server. That's just more for proof of concept. You always have CloudFront, and then Route 53 for domain name and API gateways, and Cognito for authentication and authorization. Once you pass through the authentication and the front end, then comes really the back end portion of it, which is really, in this example, which is we are talking about the data lake that we have set up, and the intent of this data lake was to really source the sorry, streaming data from IoT devices, data from your Fitbit, Apple Watch. All these data are fed to this centralized space called data lake architecture. I want to highlight some important thing here. When people talk about migrating the data into cloud, or talking about developing data warehouse, or sourcing the data from multiple sources, it is invariably that you would have three zones. First zone is called landing zone, which is really it's like a staging area. This is where you stage all your data, whether it's in spreadsheet, RDS snapshots, or files, or CSV, JSON, events, you name it. So that's where exactly you sort of stage all the data. Then comes the exploration zone. Exploration zone is really the zone where you analyze the data, apply the data quality rules, do the things that you have to do for specifically business purposes. If you have to apply some sort of a metadata, understand the data cataloging part, you use in the second zone called exploration zone. And the third zone is really the final zone, which is typically used. This is where you have flattened the data, data model. If there are multiple data sources, you flatten them and create in a flattened structure. For example, flattening of the database is really converting 100 plus tables into like 10 tables, so that but it's like deeper tables than the horizontal table, right? And this refined zone is the zone that is used typically by the data scientist and data analysis for various predictive purposes, visualization purposes of the social networking data. So this use case, the reason I included this use case is to really highlight the end-to-end product or services that AWS offers, from front end all the way to the back end. I mean, if you really pause and think about it, it has all the necessary services, data lake architecture, machine learning, IoT devices, sourcing the data, and then all the front end. So hopefully this use case gives you a better understanding how the end-to-end pieces works in AWS. And with this, I think we will move on to the next part of the chapter, which is called AWS Architecture and Design Principles. Thank you.